All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are locked on Falcons. I'm your host, Aaron Freeman, and today I'm giving you my rapid reaction to the highs and lows of the Falcons' 30-17 Week 13 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at falcfans.com. RIP, still going strong. However, on Twitter, at FalcFans, and of course, the host of this illustrious Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, you can find my written content as well, in addition to this audio content, on the Falcoholic, the SB Nation website for the Atlanta Falcons. And of course, today's episode, we are giving you the rapid reaction to the Falcons' Week 13 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They dropped that game 30-17. The record now falls to 5-7. We're coming at you a few hours after the game ended on Sunday night to give you sort of my big takeaways from this game. We'll be breaking down the game summary for any of those that missed the game or need a refresher on sort of the highs and lows and the positives and negatives from the Falcons in this game, who stood out, all those various things. Then we'll get into my grades for each phase of the game, talking pass and rushing offense, pass and rushing defense, as well as special teams. And then we'll sort of get into my big thoughts, and that will be including revisiting the conversation about the coaching versus the talent, and we sort of where are we with Arthur Smith after this game, and sort of if there were some positives from the Falcons in this game that make us feel a little bit better about Arthur Smith or worse about Arthur Smith and this team's potential to start winning some games the rest of the season and remain in the playoff picture, although they're barely hanging on. But with that being said, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. And of course, Locked On Falcons is free and available on a variety of podcast platforms, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, and Spotify, as well as now free and available on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button when you visit the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that like button as well. Leave a comment if you dare. How dare you? No, but yeah, that's what I wanted to say before we get into the game summary. And starting out this game, it was a big improvement for the Falcons defense going up against this Bucs team. You go back to that week 2 matchup, the Falcons allowed the Bucs to go 75 yards in 6 plays, thanks to 3 20+ yard gains on the Bucs opening drive. And this time the Falcons let the Bucs go down the field and score, but it took them 13 plays to go 75 yards for that opening touchdowns. And the Bucs even had to convert a 4th and 4 to extend that drive. And the Falcons didn't give up a single gain of more than 15 yards on that drive. But of course, it still resulted in points thanks to Leonard Fournette beating Deion Jones in a flat route and Tom Brady lobbing it up over Deion Jones's head on a 3-yard score. The Falcons did, however, respond with the fast start that we needed them to have this week to have a chance against this Bucs teams, getting their first opening drive touchdown of the 2021 season on a 6-play drive of their own, thanks to a big play from Cordero Patterson on a 39-yard run to the left. Of all places, on a crack toss play. They got good blocks from Jalen Mayfield on that play. Caleb McGarry, Matt Hennessy also had some good blocks hitting their assignments downfield on that particular play. You also had Patterson doing the thing that we know Patterson does well, breaking a couple of tackles, avoiding a couple of tacklers in the open field. And then on the very next play, Mike Davis finished off the drive, running to the left side again on a stretch play, getting good blocks from Hennessy and Lindstrom downfield for a 17-yard scoring run. Of course, the Bucs found their big play offense on their second possession of the game, got a 25-yard catch from Chris Godwin on a fade over Richie Grant. 2 plays later, Brady hit Mike Evans on a 36-yarder where it looked like the Falcons had a little bit of a blown coverage maybe. It looked like they were running some version of an inverted cover 2, and AJ Terrell was playing underneath and expecting some deep help on the vertical route. but it was Chris Godwin, I think it was, holding Richie Grant, who was responsible for the deep half of the field, playing that inverted cover two, and Grant got kind of held by Godwin's vertical route, and that basically let Evans run free behind Terrell for the big play. And then a few plays later, Brady and Cameron Brate finished off the drive with a 3-yard catch again over Deion Jones. And the Falcons failed to respond thanks to a drop from Tajay Sharp on the ensuing series. And then Ndamukong Suh got the first of his 2 sacks on the day and the first of 5 sacks on the day for the Bucs today. And it wasn't really the Falcons tackles that were struggling. It was, as we kind of expected going into this game, the interior of the offensive line that really struggled, giving up the pressure evidenced by the Suh sack. And there will be other sacks from guys like Vita Vea later in the game. The Falcons defense did force a 3-and-out, and Russell Gage then had a big 19-yard catch to extend the ensuing drive on a 3rd and 10. Then you had or on that particular play, you had Matt Ryan doing a good job stepping up in the pocket to avoid pressure. Then on a 3rd and 9 later in that drive, Kyle Pitts had a big 29-yard play, making a nice leaping grab over the middle. Gage then converted another 3rd down, and the Falcons got a weak roughing the passer call going against the Bucs on a throwaway by Matt Ryan in the end zone. Gage's catch got the Falcons down to the 1-yard line. The roughing the passer gave him a new set of downs. And then the Falcons basically had 3 chances to punch it in from the 1-yard line and failed to do so. And it was a little surprising to see Arthur Smith go away from the generally conservative run first attack that he has been known for this season. And especially on this day where the Falcons were running the ball so effectively prior to this point in the game, with their 8 runs, 7 of them being successful runs, combining for 91 yards up to this point. And then the Falcons didn't run a single run play, although to be fair, the 2nd and goal play looked like it was potentially going to be a run play that had a botched exchange from center Drew Dahlman, and the Falcons did recover it. And yes, Drew Dahlman was in the game because the Falcons did the thing that they did last week against Jacksonville, platooning Drew Dahlman and Matt Hennessy at the center position. Hennessy got the first 2 series. Dahlman got the next 2. I think after the botch snap that Dahlman had, and then he had another one on his 2nd series. I don't recall seeing Dahlman in the second half, so I think the Falcons scrapped that, but maybe I missed it or whatever the case may be. And we talked earlier this week about how platooning offensive linemen is not a major issue, at least based off my film study, but this is one of those risks that you run when you do have a new guy, particularly at the center position, where you can have, some things get screwed up with some of these exchanges, and that was on full display today. So after that 2nd and goal, botch snap exchange, the Falcons on 3rd and goal, Matt Ryan tried to throw the ball to Cordero Patterson. It was broken up by Jamel Dean. There was a lot of contact on the play, but no flag on the play. And Younghoe Koo went in to kick the 21-yard field goal, and that cut Tampa Bay's lead to 13-10. And by the way, Tampa Bay missed the point after touchdown on their previous score on break. Then the Bucs were able to move the ball down the field pretty easily after that point, got a touchdown on a 9-play scoring drive, capped off with a 27-yard catch from tight end Rob Gronkowski, who beat Jalen Hawkins on a crossing pattern. Hawkins dove to try to break up the pass, couldn't, hit the ball, and Gronk was able to cruise into the end zone for a touchdown. You had a defensive holding penalty on Carlton Davis, preventing the Falcons from, following up that Gronk score with a 3-and-out. And then you had Dahlman's second botched exchange just before the 2-minute warning hit. Quadri Olison got in the game that converted a 3rd and 2 on an 8-yard catch. But then the next 3rd down try, there was too much pressure on Matt Ryan, and the Falcons couldn't convert, and the team punted the ball back to the Bucs with 44 seconds left in the half, pinning them inside the 10-yard line. And Brady's second pass on that ensuing series in the flat to Leonard Fournette was read perfectly by Marlon Davidson, who Brady seemingly did not see dropping into coverage on that play. He was able to sort of jump the throwing lane and walked into the end zone for a 3-yard pick 6 interception touchdown return. And it looked like with that score going down, 3 points at halftime, 20-17, that the Falcons potentially had some life because they were going to get the ball to start off the second half and maybe take a lead here and really make this a game. Of course, They did not do that because of the Falcons. And you saw Russell Gage getting a nice grab on a 3rd and 13 over the middle in turning up field and converting, but then was stripped from behind by Bucks backup cornerback Pierre Desir. Carlton Davis recovered the ball. Fortunately, the Falcons defense did not give up points on the ensuing Bucks series, forcing a 3-and-out thanks to Tom Brady missing an open Mike Evans on a go ball. And the Falcons' next series in the third quarter saw them convert a 3rd-and-1 on short yardage, seemingly for the first time ever this season. They've converted a couple, but it's been rare occurrences. And it was a 1-yard run by Cordell Patterson up the middle, and they barely converted, but it still counts. Then a couple plays later, they had another 3rd-and-1, and they did a jet sweep to Olamide Zaccheaus, showing that Arthur Smith is willing, at least on one play, to diversify his run game a little bit today from the usual like 4 or 5 of the same runs that he seems to like to run over and over again. Then you had Russell Gage adding 16 yards on a screen pass, and the Falcons found themselves in Bucks territory, but then things kind of stalled out for them. Carlton Davis broke up a 2nd down throw to Kyle Pitts, and then on 3rd down, Matt Ryan was sacked again by Ndamukong Suh, who bullied Jalen Mayfield for another sack, the 4th sack of the game at this point in time. The Falcons punted the ball. The Bucks dinked and dunked their way down the field on a 14-play, 87-yard scoring drive that bled off most of the remaining 6 minutes of the third quarter. That included 3 third-down conversions, with the third one being an 11-yard catch by Rob Gronkowski for a score, where he was able to beat Eric Harris. It was a perfect throw by Tom Brady over his shoulder, perfect placement there, and the Bucs went up 27-17. Going into the fourth quarter, the Falcons responded with a 3-and-out, thanks to Vita Vea getting his 2nd sack of the day on a 3rd down, blowing right past Jalen Mayfield to start the fourth quarter. The Falcons would get one more chance really to make this a game at this point, getting the ball back with about 11 and a half minutes left in the game after a Bucks punt. They nearly lost the possession on the punt, where the ball bounced off Avery Williams's leg, but fortunately it first bounced off of the arm of a Bucks defender, and that basically resulted in a dead ball due to the rules. You saw 2 good catches from Mike Davis, a 20-yard gain and a 16-yard gain, where he really utilized his ability after the catch, but the latter, the 16-yard gain, was wiped out with a holding call on Lee Smith. But the Falcons did manage to convert a 3rd and 14 thanks to a big leaping grab by Russell Gage for 17 yards. Then on the ensuing 3rd and 2 beyond midfield, Matt Ryan was pressured with a questionable play call and threw it away to avoid the sack, and they wound up calling him for intentional grounding. It was the correct call. But the Falcons opted to punt the ball at that point rather than going for it on 4th and 12. It would have been a very tough 4th and 12 to convert, but you kind of think playing the field position game and hoping your defense was going to get another stop was certainly a questionable decision at that point, down 10 points with basically like 7.5 minutes left in the game. And the reason why that play call on 3rd and 2 was questionable, the Falcons put their heavy personnel, their 22 personnel, on the field, and you had Pitts, Lee Smith, and Parker Hesse, or really technically, I guess you could call it 23 personnel. With Pitts, but Pitts kind of functions as a wide receiver at this point in time. But you had the 3 tight ends with Pitts, Lee Smith, and Parker Hesse. You had the 2 running backs in Keith Smith and Cordero Patterson. And the Falcons then motioned those guys out to be an empty backfield, and you wind up having Keith Smith lined up, split out wide on one side, Parker Hesse split out wide on the other side, and sort of in the slot you had Pitts and Lee Smith on one side and Patterson on the other side, and it essentially resulted in the Falcons going for it on a critical 3rd and 2 without having many of their best pass catching personnel on the field. And when you think of that situation, if you're going to go with your heavy 23 personnel, that's probably not a situation where you want to motion those guys out, right? You want to make the Bucks think that you're going to run the ball in that 3rd and 2 and then hit them with play action with that heavy personnel. Or if you're going to go empty in that play, you probably want to have your best pass catchers on the field at that point in time. And the Falcons really did neither, which is leading to the questions around that play call. And so one of the things I definitely want to watch when I watch the film again, they showed a replay of Patterson running a hitch route, and seemingly there was a quick window where Matt Ryan could have found him, but Matt Ryan didn't throw it. And I don't know if it was because Matt Ryan was looking, just the timing of it was too early for Matt Ryan to pull the trigger on the throw, or what I suspect was the case. Matt Ryan was kind of looking at Kyle Pitts on the opposite side of the field running the slant. And we've talked about this in the past where, a lot of times this offense is not necessarily living up to its full potential because, there have been various times over the last, 3 or 4 weeks where it seems like Matt Ryan is locking on to Kyle Pitts and it hasn't necessarily made this offense as impactful as it could be. So that's definitely something I do want to revisit on the All 22, looking at that specific play. So after the Falcons punted the ball on 4th and 12, and it was a Thomas Morstead punt, and he had a very good punt at that point. The Bucs basically proceeded to bleed 5 more minutes off the clock with a very methodical drive. They got a 36-yard play from Chris Godwin early in the game, or early in that series to get. He got behind the defense, and it was one of many plays that Godwin made in this game. He had an outstanding game going up against Falcons nickel cornerbacks Richie Grant and Darren Hall, who were sort of platooning in that role throughout the game. Grant did exit the game in midway through the third quarter with an ankle injury, so it was Hall in the game at this point in time playing that nickel cornerback spot. But Godwin finished the game with 15 catches for 143 yards. That 15 catches was a career high. 143 yards is not a career high for Chris Godwin because he had a 184-yard game against the Falcons way back in 2019. I'm sure many of you remember that infamous game. But this marks now the fourth 100-yard receiving game for Chris Godwin against the Falcons in his career. All four of those have come in his last 6 outings, going back to the Week 17 game against the Falcons in 2018. But at least the Falcons did keep him out of the end zone this time, as he hasn't been held without a touchdown catch against the Falcons since his rookie year in 2017. Gage did his best to sort of match Godwin, finishing the game with 11 catches for 130 yards. Both of those are career highs for him. This marks Gage's 7th game of his career where he's had 65 or more receiving yards, and this is the 5th of those 7 games that has come against the Bucs. So we know that Gage, consistently eats against his team, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough today. But I digress. The Bucs were able to bleed down the clock after that punt down to under the 2-minute warning, and ultimately resulted in a 31-yard field goal from Ryan Suckup, and that pushed their lead to 30-17. The Falcons did get the ball back with about 1:49 left in the game. 3 of Gage's 11 catches did come on that final drive, one of which he did injure himself but didn't return to the game. But the key play on that final drive that put the Falcons downfield and with a position to score at the very end of the game was a 30-yard play to Olamide Zaccheaus, where he did a really good job bobbling a sort of one-handed back shoulder throw down the field. That put the ball inside the Bucs 10-yard line, but unfortunately, Matt Ryan's next 2 passes were not completed to get the touchdown. Carlton Davis nearly picked off the throw on first down to Zaccheaus, and then on the second down play, the final play of the game, Matt Ryan hit Gage high on the back of the end zone, but unfortunately, maybe the injury had something to do with this. But Gage wasn't able to secure that catch by climbing the ladder, and that was the end of the game. So the positives of this game are the Falcons did look competitive against a quality opponent. The first time we've seen that. That's progress from what we have seen so far from this team this season. We saw Matt Ryan bounce back after a very ugly game against Jacksonville and look very good, much improved in this game. He just needed a lot more support from his offensive line. We talked about how the Falcons needed a fast start. We hoped that we would see maybe a special teams touchdown from Cordero Patterson in this game. Unfortunately, he did not return kicks. It was Avery Williams, but we did get a defensive touchdown from Marlon Davidson with that pick 6, which was the biggest play of the game for the Falcons, and really, maybe put the fear of God in the Bucs going into halftime. And that gave them a chance. But of course, those second half struggles on offense and the fact that the defense really couldn't get off the field consistently enough on third downs meant that, the Falcons weren't able to pull off the improbable upset. And sort of we'll get into more of this game, talking more about the grades for not only the offensive line, the offense, the defense, but the rest of the team. And we'll talk about the sort of familiar struggles of that Falcons offensive line. But does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you got your father's, brothers, nephews, cousins, former roommate Deborah's login for your preferred streaming service. Well, I want to tell you about a way that you can get all the entertainment you love without any of the hassle. A great way to finally get your TV together. That's called DirectTV Stream. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, besides not having to borrow Deborah's login, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirectTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. So, giving out the game grades as I do each and every week on these rapid reactions, looking at the pass offense, pass defense, rushing defense, and the special teams. Starting out with the pass offense, I give them a C minus. Again, I think Matt Ryan played well. Russell Gage had a career day. Mike Davis looked like the player that we saw in Carolina last year, being very elusive after the catch. He finished the game with 4 catches for 37 yards. Kyle Pitts was mostly held in check. He had that big 29-yard play in the second quarter, but outside that, he finished the game with a relatively quiet 4 catches for 48 yards. The Falcons did have 3 explosive plays through the air, though one arguably came in garbage time with that Zacchaeus big play at the end of the game. So, not as dynamic as you would want to see, but again, it's hard to generate explosive plays against this Bucs defense. And so you had a couple of drops in this game, but nothing that was like too harrowing for the Falcons to overcome. It was mostly the pass protection that really held back this offense and this passing attack. And we've seen that happen a number of times against this Bucs defense over the last couple of years. As I said earlier, it was the interior that really struggled. 2 sacks for Ndamukong Suh, 2 sacks for Vita Vea. Cam Gill did beat Jake Matthews for a sack in the second quarter, but it didn't necessarily have a huge negative impact on that drive as the Falcons were able to get those yards back on the ensuing play and continue to extend that drive at the beginning of the second quarter. But both Suh sacks and the one from Vea did come on third downs in this game. And Matt Ryan was hit 11 times in this game, which is unacceptable. So independent of the offensive line, I think it was one of the better games we've seen from key Falcon skill players over the last month, especially. But essentially, if you're getting D level play from the offensive line and B level play from the skill positions, it's going to drag down the overall grade to a C minus, as I gave it. Looking at the rushing offense, the run game started off very strong. The Falcons had 101 rushing yards in the first half. They finished with 121, so that tells you how it went in the second half for them. Overall, they finished with a success rate of 55%, but in the first half, they were successful on 80% of the runs and only 30% in the second half. They continued to be predominantly a left-handed running attack. They had 10 design runs to the left side and only 6 to the right, and 3 of those ones to the right came in the fourth quarter that seemingly were just kind of perfunctory at that point in time, where they're just kind of running the ball so that they don't get in a 100% passing attack, down 2 scores at that point. But running to the left side mostly worked for them today, and that's been the case the last couple of weeks. So maybe it's time to put that narrative that they can't run left to bed. But I give the running game and the offensive line credit for its success early in the game, but when the running game evaporated in the second half, that's when the offense's problems really sort of got exasperated. In the first half, the Falcons had a success rate of 83% when they ran the ball on first down. In the second half, they only ran the ball successfully on first downs 20% of the time. And when they couldn't rely on the running game to keep their offense on schedule on first downs, that put more pressure on the pass protection in the ensuing plays. And you know how that goes. When they couldn't follow up an unsuccessful first down run with a successful second down pass play, usually some quick throw for 5 to 7 yards, bad things started to happen for this offense. And we've seen that time and time again over the years. Now, moving on to the pass defense, I gave them a D plus. This is the lowest grade I've given the pass defense all year long. I think when you look at it from one perspective and you sort of grade this unit on a curve, given how easily we've seen this Bucs offense carve them up, you can make the case that this game was, relatively speaking, an improvement from what we've seen. They didn't give up as many big plays. Obviously, Godwin had the big day, but you also saw positive performance or strong performance from Tom Brady, Gronk, Mike Evans, and Gronk probably had a better game than his stat sheet said. He had 4 catches for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think I saw that this was his first game with a touchdown since the week 2 game against the Falcons, where he had 2 touchdowns then. But Gronk dropped seemingly like 3 passes in this game. So he probably would have had a much better stat line than it showed. And we've seen the Falcons, inability to match up with these Bucs receivers continually get exposed. Their nickel cornerback with Godwin doing his thing, and the fact that they can't really match up any of their guys on Gronk like they've had in the past. So they did get a little bit of pressure on a handful of plays in this game, but it only resulted in one quarterback hit and no sacks for the Falcons. So clearly, it was not enough to really affect this game all that much. And again, if you're grading on a curve, I think we've seen worse performances from this Falcons defense against this Bucks offense. So I think you can progress it that way. But overall, objectively, without sort of that sort of bias inherent into it, it's hard to give this pass defense anything more than a D plus grade. Given how much the Patriots threw the ball, I think they dropped back 52 times in this game, and given how efficient they were, in the fact that they could do whatever they really wanted through the air, whether it was throwing the Godwin, throwing the Gronk, throwing the Evans, you can't really give the Falcons pass defense much of a better grade than that. And so it was clear from play one that the Bucks had no respect for the Falcons pass defense. They threw the ball 13 times on 13 plays on their opening drive in the game, and then they threw it like 4 out of 6 times on their second possession. So basically their 20 play script included like 17 passing plays, right? If they scripted the first 20 plays, they scripted 17 passing plays. And even in the fourth quarter, when they were already up 2 scores, they started out like that last scoring drive, throwing the ball 4 times before they started milking clock in earnest with the running game. And so, like, that's just telling you exactly what you can't get disrespected like that, and not really fight back in the way that you want to see. So D plus for the Falcons pass defense. Run defense, I give them a C. On the rare occasions that the Bucks did run the football, the Falcons did a decent job stopping. The Bucks finished with a success rate of 44% on 16 design runs. Stephen Means led the team along with Foye Oluokun for the lead with 2 run stops in this game. So a okay game return for Stephen Means as a run defender, but obviously he did not impact the game much at all as a pass rusher. Moving on to the special teams, this was the bright spot of the team today. It was B plus. Another great day for reigning special teams player of the week, Thomas Morstead, in his second game as the Falcons punter, who did his job on his one real attempt. Also did a good job on kickoffs. Avery Williams, as I said earlier, returned kickoffs, stepping in for Cordero Patterson there, and of course returned punts. He had a decent kickoff at the very end of the game on the final possession, and then the punt stuff. That one play was a little sketchy, but other than that, and then you factor in the coverage units, special teams did their job, right? Despite that one almost turnover, I'm giving them a B plus. So that will do it for the grading portion of the game, and we'll sort of get into more of the conversation surrounding Arthur Smith, his coaching. We'll talk a little bit more about his play calling. We'll talk about if this game, should we blame Arthur Smith, and spoiler alert, I'm not blaming Arthur Smith for the Falcons loss. We just know the Bucks are a better football team, and we'll get more into the conversation over what sort of things that Arthur Smith showed today that were improvements, and certain things that he may need to continue to improve upon if the Falcons, or the next time they play a team like the Bucks, or in the upcoming weeks where they're playing teams not as good as the Bucks, will we see a better outcome than what we got this Sunday on week 13. But before we get into all of that, guys, I want to thank you for making Locked On Falcons your first listen each and every day. And of course, I always have recommendations for what your second listen should be. And of course, if you're local to the Atlanta area, I'm sure you can check out Locked On Braves, Locked On Hawks, and much as many of you might be disappointed, Locked On Bulldogs has you covered for all the reaction to the SEC championship game, and what is in store for this Georgia team as they head to the college football playoffs. Unfortunately, Georgia fans, not everybody can root for a college football team that won their conference this year. Hail to Pitt, go ACC champions. But I won't rub any more salt into that wound as we continue today's Locked On Falcons podcast, because it is the holiday season, and it's a perfect time to grab a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and in fact, even better than a protein bar. And if you don't know what I'm talking about Built Bars, the best tasting protein bar on the market. They are rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but they're healthy too, low in sugar, calories, carbs, and fat, but high in protein and fiber. You get the best of both worlds, both delicious and healthy. There's so many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. You can get old favorites like peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel. You got new ones like blueberry muffin, paranormal pumpkin, white chocolate cheesecake, caramel almond delight, and caramel macchiato, a limited time flavor now on sale at built.com. Built Bar gives you the extra fuel that you'll need this holiday season to endure those endless shopping lines, battle all those holiday shoppers for a great deal. But Built Bar, of course, has a great deal for you at built.com. All you got to do, head over to the website and use the promo code locked15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, that's locked15 for 15% off at built.com. It's the holiday season, of course, and BetOnline has had you covered all season long and still does, with more odds, props, and lines than ever as we march towards both the NFL and college football playoffs. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all your sports action this season, from playoff football to regular season basketball and hockey to boxing, the UFC, all the way to your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Head to the new updated website or mobile device, or head to the new updated desktop or mobile website at betonline.ag. Sign up today, use the promo code locked on, and you'll get a 50% welcome bonus. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available at BetOnline, where the game starts. So rather than doing what the rest of you guys are probably going to wind up doing and looking for a scapegoat to blame for today's disappointment, particularly the second half struggles of the Falcons, the reality is that we know the Falcons lost to the Bucs because the Bucs are better than them. That's not some great revelation. And that's not me sort of being hypocritical with my anti-talent deficiency stance or whatever the case may be. Like, we've known this, even going back, even before Tom Brady showed up, that the Bucs were arguably a more talented team than the Falcons. We knew that the Falcons, if they had any chance to win this game, they were going to have to play above themselves, or the Bucs were going to have to lay an egg. We didn't get the Bucs laying an egg, but it did at least seem like the Falcons early on in this game were prepared to come and play today and punch the Bucs in the mouth. We got a good start by the running game. We got a defensive touchdown. We got good day by the special teams, but unfortunately, the defenses and offensive line's inability to match up with the Bucs again proved to be their Achilles heel, and that's been a common theme throughout this season, whether it's against the Bucs or other teams. If you're looking at three areas of the roster that have consistently let the team down, held them back from reaching their goals this season, to being a more competitive team, it has been the offensive line, it has been the lack of pass rush, and it has been their inability to match up man to man in the back end. And those are arguably the three biggest needs heading into the offseason that the team should and will be expected to address. Now, speaking of their ability to match up on the back end, we can certainly have a conversation if that's really what Dean Pease wants to do, and be more of this man-heavy team that the Falcons have sort of slowly transitioned into the past month or so since their bye week. We know about Dean Pease is that he's going to play to what he perceives to be the strengths of his team. And so this zone heaviness early in the season was probably a testament to him not necessarily trusting in the ability of the guys on the back end to man up teams. And it looked like we saw more man today against the Bucs than we saw in that week 2 game, where the Falcons came out and played a ton of cover 2 in that game and got carved up in that game. But we've seen a lot more man from this team overall, as I said, over the last 5 or 6 weeks since the early part of the season. And that's probably a testament to the fact, again, to this point about Dean Pease playing to what he perceives to be the strengths or playing against the weaknesses of his team. The fact that the Falcons have been having to rely on a lot more younger players to play on the back end means that he's probably simplifying his defense to a certain extent and playing a lot more man coverage to avoid some of the zone busts and mental errors that we have seen and we saw on display today as well. So we'll have to sort of see if Dean Pease really wants to be this man heavy defense in the future, or if playing the zone stuff is something that he prefers to do. And obviously that will affect what they plan to do this offseason. But we're still in December. We can really talk about that in earnest come January, February, March, etc. So I'm not going to do the thing that I think a lot of you guys are expecting me to do and be like, oh, the Falcons lost today because Arthur Smith is a bad coach. I don't really believe that the Falcons lost today because Arthur Smith, screwed them over or anything like that. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to wait before I get too judgmental, to watch the film on Tuesday, report back to you guys on Wednesday what I see, as I do every single week on the Locked On Falcons podcast. There were certainly some head scratching decisions in this game. Certainly, I think it's fair to criticize Arthur Smith at this point in time without seeing the film for some of those decisions. It was weird seeing Arthur Smith not being as conservative as he's been through the first 12 weeks of this season at the 1 yard line, where the Falcons seemingly got very pass heavy. That's probably the one time where you're like, okay, Arthur Smith, maybe your proclivity to run the ball makes a lot of sense at this point in time, especially given how much success the Falcons had running the football. Then you had that 3rd and 2 play call where they went empty with the heavy formation being a head scratcher. Then you can certainly make the claim that, when they failed to punch it in from that 1 yard line, the fact that the Falcons decided to settle for 3 instead of trying to go for it, on 4th and goal from the 3 yard line, you could certainly question that decision to a certain extent, as well as the decision to punt the ball late in the game on that 4th and 12 with about 7 minutes left in the game near midfield. Again, questionable game management decision right there. But as I've explained in the past, if I wind up watching the film and I come away thinking like a half dozen play calls or decisions were questionable, out of a game that featured 69 such play calls, that's still over 90% of the play calls that were fine, that weren't necessarily questionable. And it's hard for me to be too judgmental and too critical of the play call. My issue has always been to clarify, it's never to sort of label Arthur Smith as a bad coach or a bad play caller or whatever the case may be. When I have been critical of him, I think too often, because there's a tendency to interpret criticism as blaming, because there's too often blaming in this headspace, and I don't necessarily believe in blaming things on a player or a coach or whatever, ownership or whatever you guys like to blame things on. I just like, constructive criticism. At least I see it as constructive criticism. And I think what happens is when I'm critical of Arthur Smith, you guys interpret that as blaming, and that's why many of you push back so heavily, and deflect that criticism, or really that blame, to the talent level or in the deficiencies. And the point I've been trying to express these last couple of weeks on this podcast, as frequently as I continue to rehash these same arguments and debates, is, I don't know if, at this point in time, if we know if Arthur Smith is a good coach or not. And my point is that we're going to need him to be a good coach if this Falcons team is going to reach their goals, which, is not only being a perennial playoff team and hopefully a Super Bowl contender, but also to avoid the fate where they're going to be basically have their team completely nuked and tore down, at some point within the next 2 or 3 years. And I think, our fan base wants to look at the team's 5-7 record and tell itself that, oh, look, we're improved from last year, and we're doing it despite the fact that we have significantly less talent. And the fact that we won those games is a testament to how good a coach is, because a lot of that has been hinging on, the narrative that people have been telling themselves for the better part of the last 2 years, that all of our problems stemmed, all of that blame directed at the coaching staff for the Falcons' shortcomings. And I feel like that's a false narrative. And I think, now that narrative has shifted to, basically blaming, it's all talent related as the Falcons shortcomings. And as I pointed out already today, no one's denying that the Falcons would benefit from more talent on the roster. No one's denying that the Bucs are a significantly more talented team than the Falcons. But I think the cold, harsh reality is that the Falcons now 5-7 record is more a reflection of their soft schedule than improved coaching. And contrary to popular opinion, it's hard to sit here and say right now, based off of what we have seen over 12 games, if the Falcons have really upgraded their coaching staff in a major way. Now, I don't think also that we can say that the Falcons have downgraded their talent in a major way. I don't think the loss of talent, the deficiencies of talent, are as substantial as some would claim. And obviously I could continue to rant and go deeper on that but I will let that go for today. I'm sure we'll get another opportunity to speak on some of those issues later this week, as we have spoken on those issues so many times over the last 3 or so weeks. So it's not me blaming Arthur Smith. It's just me saying that I think he's going to have to be better if this team is going to make a playoff run, not only this year and or next year, especially when the schedule gets a whole lot harder in 2022. So it's really like, if Arthur Smith is just a C plus or B minus level head coach, and for me right now, it's hard for me to imagine anybody thinking at this point in time that we've seen enough from him to say that he's more than that. Then that to me is not going to be good enough given the circumstances that are ahead of him and this football team in the near future. So we'll just sort of have to see how that plays out. But obviously, there's no sort of finality on the Arthur Smith conversation. We're going to continue having that on this podcast this year and into the future, as we continue to collect data in order to determine where sort of Arthur Smith fits on that. But that's kind of the point I've been trying to make these last couple of weeks, if that has not been clear. Now, before we leave out today, let's talk a little bit about some of the positives. We did see the team be competitive against a quality opponent. We haven't really seen that happen this year outside of that Saints game. And in retrospect, given the Saints struggles, that win does not look nearly as impressive today as it did, what was it, 5 weeks ago when it happened, or 4 weeks ago when it happened. We've also seen the running game seemingly get to a level of competence over the last couple of weeks, and that was on display early in this game. We got a winnable game coming up next week against Carolina, who's breaking in a brand new offensive coordinator. If you didn't hear the news, they fired Joe Brady, their offensive coordinator, during this on Sunday, this being their bye week. Then the following week, we got San Francisco. That's a team that has been scoring quite a bit of points these last couple of weeks, pretty consistently. So we're going to need this offense to be, on track if the point is going to be to outscore that team. And then, of course, you got a game against Detroit. And fortunately, our brothers from Minnesota, we know that the Vikings and Falcons fans are basically the same fan base, just in a different part of the country. And, one of them eats Jello, and the other one eats chicken wings. I don't know, stereotyping Minnesota people. The Falcons now are uplifted with the burden of being the team that loses to the Detroit Lions. So kudos to our brothers up north for taking care of business for us. And we don't necessarily have to go into that game worried that, oh no, the Falcons are going to be the only team that loses to the Lions this year. So, this 3-game stretch is going to tell us, continue to inform us about this team, this coaching staff, as well as these players. So obviously, I think there are things that they can build off of. The thing I continue to stress is, all I ask from this team is a entertaining, competitive football game. I think we got mostly that. They were able to, weather the storm of this Bucs team for 2.5 quarters. And my stance has been that they have more than enough talent to do that against every single team that they face this year, which is part of the reason why I don't necessarily buy in the whole talent deficiency thing. But we'll just sort of have to see if we continue to see the team build off of this win and some of their recent success, and whether or not they can improve on some of their non-success on Sunday, as well as recent games, as we continue as we continue this season's games, and whether or not the Falcons can hold on to their 4% chance of making the playoffs, as various data analytics websites seem to insist. And basically, if they don't go 3-0 over these next couple of weeks, it's going to be hard for them. But we'll sort of have to see, right? I think 2-1 will keep them in the hunt, but we'll just sort of have to see how that goes. But that's where we'll leave it, guys. And before we duck out of here, I'll give you another recommendation for your second listen after you check out today's Locked On Falcons. And that's, of course, the Locked On Bets podcast. If you want to make a little bit of money, to put some extra money in your pocket after you spent it for your holiday gift giving this season, or if you want to add a little bit of those ducats in order to blow away your family and your friends with some more extravagant gifts. Of course, Locked On Bets is probably the best thing for you, as Lee Sterling, the handicapping expert on that podcast each and every day, is giving you his daily picks, his blowout specials, and of course his lock of the day. And Lee has been killing it so far this season. So definitely check out the Locked On Bets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So guys, there you have it. We'll be back with another topic. I haven't booked a guest quite yet. We might talk about some other things than the usual Tuesday show with a guest, but we'll sort of have to see. We'll play it by ear if there's some things that we can talk about. And so we'll get into that potentially on tomorrow. And of course, we'll be back Wednesday with an all 22 review and a Q&A. And if you have questions that you want to have answered potentially on tomorrow or Wednesday show, of course, you can hit me up on Twitter at Locked On Falcons, Facebook at Locked On Falcons. Email address is lockedonfalcons@mail.com. And of course, you can leave a comment here on the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel. So guys, that will do it. I hope, you know, I hope you're doing fine after this loss. It's unfortunate, but I wouldn't necessarily take it to heart. I think we got a much more competitive game than many of us thought we would see, and so that's something better than nothing at this point in time with the Falcons. And we'll see what's next for this Falcon team as we continue on Locked On Falcons this season. Appreciate it. Till then.